Civil war, where a line is drawn in the sand and two factions within the same nation fight against each other for power. Today, I'm going to be sharing the story of how I started the deadliest civil war on this Minecraft server, how the fate of the entire world lied on the outcome, and how these types of conflicts are anything but civil. It all started some time ago when I swore loyalty to the server's goddess of darkness, leading for me to destroy the moon in an attempt to heal my friend. That was the recap. Now let's continue the story. The days following the destruction of the moon were not good for the people in the Minecraft world of Rathnir. Meteorites began to crash down, causing massive damage to infrastructure across the world. It began to rain pure blood, and several world religions were now entirely destroyed. Everyone started to point fingers at one another, looking for someone to blame. And as expected, that blame all fell down on me and the Huitka Federation. And rightfully so. I had destroyed the moon for the god's sake. To save and heal the Emperor, I said. But from an outside point of view, I was nothing but a lunatic. Get it? Like moon. Anyways, I was just crazy, under the spell of a very good-looking goddess. Justifiably, the nations of the world were absolutely enraged. The Huitka Federation was in a state of disarray. The Grand Assembly, basically Huitka's parliament, was divided on the events and the legality of the lunar crisis, as it came to be known. Some cabinet members demanded for my deportation or imprisonment for ruining Huitka's public image, and others praised me for what I had done for the good of the Emperor. And soon enough, debates unfolded on the floor of the House that would often end in horrendous arguments or even outright violence between cabinet members. And this political divide didn't stop at the doors of the Huitka parliament either. Individual states within the Federation began taking sides in the issue, and very quickly, within a matter of days, two very different political factions began to form. There's the anti-rocket Koyalists, led by the Huitka Crown Prince Wankoyo, who mainly resided in the Huitka heartlands in the center of the Federation, and the pro-destruction Entropy supporters, led by none other than me, who resided in the deep north and south of Huitka's mainland. The Federation was already on a delicate balance as it was, and the lunar issue just amplified the Federation's divide. The tension was intense. You could literally cut it with a knife. And then... on the 17th of March, 2021, the Huitka state of Sneedistan, as you may remember from previous videos, began to vie for independence from the Federation, but not for the reason you may expect. You see, they were entirely against the destruction of the moon. In fact, they believed in a religion that worshipped a moon goddess. But now that the moon was gone, their entire religion was rendered absolutely useless. They blamed the crown and the federal government for what had happened, and on March 19th, the Huitka crown and the state government met in the Huitka capital city to negotiate on how to solve the ongoing crisis. Hey Huitka, our religion is gone and we want independence. Rex acted on his own. The government in no way supports his decision. But still, you let it happen within your territory. This event shows that you do not have the sufficient power and means to uphold your own territorial sovereignty, and therefore, we, the Sneedy people, are kindly requesting for our independence. Well, you can't do that. Independence is illegal under the governance section of the Huitka Constitution. Well, about that. We've hired some lawyers from Bardonia, and after a close examination of the Constitution, we found a way we could legally succeed. You see, the Constitution states that a specific Calipoli and any other internal land area are specifically forbidden from seceding from the Federation. That implies that secession is illegal unilaterally and by means of a democratic referendum. Is that correct? Correct. But it doesn't say anything about taking an area of the Federation and selling it to another nation, or in this case, a newly created one. If you sell the state their independence, it bypasses the secession law because no one is technically seceding, right? You little rat. And so, on the 20th of March, Sneedistan became independent, reforming itself into the Grand Cornflower Republic. This moment, in the eyes of many, was seen as a turning point in the Federation. Many pro-destruction entropy worshippers saw this and thought, hey, if they seceded because they believed in a different ideology, why can't we? Oh, look at that! It's March 20th. That means it's election time and we have to choose a new prime minister for the Federation. Let's see who the lovely candidates are this month. Here's Ronawak, a well-known pro-entropy candidate who pledges to do nothing about the current crisis. Good start. Bruh. Next is Homereno, another pro-entropy candidate who pledges to do nothing. And finally, the new guy on the scene here is Sumo MC, a fierce anti-entropy candidate with a strong platform focusing on fixing Huitka and its image on the world stage. Now, who do you think won? If you guessed Sumo MC, you would be correct. in a landslide, in fact. Sumo was a fresh face to the scene. He grew up as an orphan in Huitka's frontier town of Athenia and was relatively unknown outside of his state. But after the moon incident, he saw his opportunity to jump into politics. Unfortunately, Sumo didn't have the best start to his term. On the day he took office, Huitka's largest city, known as Regnum, in the state of Hemne, which had an openly entropite governor, was attacked by foreign bandits representing an organization known as the Anti-Huitka League, which seemed to dismantle the Federation and track me down. The Huitka army reserve in Regnum was completely outnumbered, and the city was forced to surrender to the barbarians, and they swiftly began to occupy it. The army was eventually able to force the bandits out, but the city was decimated beyond repair at this point. And the funny part is, I wasn't even in Regnum. I was a few hundred blocks north in the coastal town of Ferrofin, so they attacked the city for nothing. After the raid, Entropites, aided by the state's governor, began to protest against the Sumo administration for allowing their city to be sacked, but the protests were quickly suppressed by the Huitka army. This greatly bothered me and my followers, who saw the army's involvement in the Regnum protests as a major infringement on our democracy. But luckily for us, there was still hope. The chief diplomat was Jidai, my friend and an avid entropy supporter who was just re-elected. He could discuss with Sumo and get him to stop, right? During a session of parliament, Jidai made an elaborate speech on the glories of entropy and how Sumo's actions of demonizing entropy supporters were breaking Huitka's laws of religious freedom and were fundamentally dividing the Federation. Sumo was having none of it, and Jidai was publicly fired on the spot on the floor of the house. Jidai was in disbelief. Fired because of his religion. And when he first told me, I too was stunned. Sumo was taking it way too far. Jidai met me in my town of Ferrofin, and I quickly called an emergency meeting with my followers and councilmen. A nation that claimed to stand for freedom and democracy was actively trying to silence those who opposed the central government. The natural balance of the Federation was destroyed, if it wasn't already, and Sumo, in my eyes, had become a ruthless dictator. All while the heir regent to the throne, Huancoyo, sat idly by. What would the sick emperor think of this? The meeting, now known as the Entropic Accords, began. There, entropy supporters from across the Federation and across the world, as well as some squatters to the south of Ferrofin known as the Lusitanians, who mistakenly wandered in, met to discuss the oppression of entropy's people and the tyrannical rule of the Sumo administration. Within literal minutes of debate, everybody realized that there was only one option that seemed reasonable. If they seceded because they believed in a different ideology from the federal government, why can't we? This quote from earlier echoed through the minds of many. The Sneeds had lit the flame. We needed to secede from the Federation. Early in the morning, on March 24th, 2021, a group of prominent individuals, Ronowak, Hamareno, Jidai, myself, one of Entropy's minions, and the leader of Lusitania who had taken a liking to Entropy, met in my house in Ferrofin, and there we signed the Declaration of Independence, which outlined the rights of the Entropic peoples, declared me as president, or as I like to call it, eternally divine prophet, and formally declared the land on which my city of Ferrofin stood on as the newly created independent theocracy of Entropa, a haven for all Entropites fleeing oppression from any of the four corners of the world. Also, the name of the country is like a play on words of Entropy's name. Anyway, if I wanted to secure our independence, I had to act fast. By the late afternoon, I'd organized a small militia of Ferrofin and Lusitanian locals, and before Huitka could react, we sailed north and captured the key Huitka military fortress on the island of Dranomia in a short but decisive victory. And this victory marks the official beginning of the Huitka Civil War. But that meant that the blame of the destruction of the moon shifted away from Huitka and fell fully on to me.